we've got the centerboard to this stage. You'll see a few pale patches here, and that's just some epoxy mixed with Q-cells, and some of the places where the weave of the fiberglass was particularly pronounced, or these transition parts where I had another layer of fiberglass here, and you can't really see it, but there's another one there. I just popped a bit of Q-cells and epoxy on here, sanded that over, and that transition's gone away. This is by no means a perfect finish at the moment. It is fairly quick and dirty, even though it feels pretty nice, and I can't really feel too much weave. I can feel a little bit up there. So in any case, this is some old sandpaper that's come off the disc sander, so I'll just give it one final quick go over. I have already painted the other side. I just was short of time. I didn't have time to get a camera out, so I just had to get it done. Now I'm a little bit freer. So we have done one side, and I've also put a coat up here. This is kind of a hard wearing area. It's going to be swinging down. So that looks pretty good. I've got everything, fairly ready to go, so ready to paint. All it needs to do is I'll just wipe it down with a little bit of turpentine. And I have also masked up this wooden cap here, so we'll be peeling that off. There's two reasons I did that, just because I think it's going to look nice. But also, if I don't get paint up near my Dyneema little lifting point there, I can't get paint on it, right? So I was just being you can't really stuff up if you don't go anywhere near something. So I'll just give the centerboard just a quick dusting off, a bit of a wipe down. I am using mineral terps because I'm using an oil-based single pack paint. So this is a good thing to wipe down with, make sure that everything's nice and clean. These detergent bottles, they're impervious to quite a few chemicals. They're pretty handy. Nice to get the bulk bit, and then just have something small and easy to control how much you're putting out. Okay, before we go on to paint that centerboard, and I will be using a roller to put it on, we'll just have a quick chat about the paint that I've chosen to use. This is not a recommendation, all right? I'm just telling you what I'm doing, and the reason I say that is because I'm using a oil-based 1-part enamel paint. This one is Dulux Super Enamel. So I know that people might throw their hands up in horror, and I can sympathise because I've done that. I'll tell you a little story. I was helping a friend of mine who was a professional fisherman, a line fisherman over in Queensland, paint his little boat that he drove out to the reef, fished all day in the hot Queensland sun, then came there, unloaded fish. I was helping him paint his little workboat, and we used this stuff. So all the arguments that you could make for me not using this, I sympathise, I've already made them. But I actually saw his boat come back. He refitted it a year later. I gave him another hand, and that paint held up surprisingly well. I guess because it's meant for doors and hard wearing things in houses. It's quite an elastic paint, resists chipping quite well. I'm not trying to sell the paint, but I was convinced that for a dinghy, I can save a bit of money by using this, and I know, I've seen it, I know that this holds up pretty well on a small boat. In our refit series, when we were in Tasmania and we had our boat that we were sailing around Australia, so on a yacht where you're not doing regular touch-up, you're not doing regular refit, you're not babying, a yacht, you're like crashing around, you'll know that I chose 2-part polyurethane for that. Very, very hard, and I used Jotun was the brand that I chose. I'm not endorsing, I'm not connected to it. So I'm not one of these people that just thinks all paint is the same, okay? I'll just clear that up. But for this, I am using that. Again, I'm not recommending that you do it, but I've found that this is okay. And maybe if you check back into us when I'm sailing around the boat, we can see how that paint holds up. All right, so I just wanted to mix that with a little bit of Penetrol. So if you haven't seen this stuff, I was sort of turned on to Penetrol when we did that refit in Tasmania. I couldn't use it at the time because we were using a 2-pack polyurethane. But for an oil-based and single-pack urethane paints, which I like as well, I saw that the professional painters were just putting right up to the 5% maximum that they suggest. They were mixing that in with their paint, and they weren't spraying it. They were rolling it on. Sometimes they would tip it, but a lot of times they wouldn't. So this stuff really helped to level the paint out and give a really nice professional slick finish. I'm just going to be rolling this. It's a centerboard. I don't want to, I don't want to go too crazy on it. I have sanded it mainly for nice performance through the water, but it should look okay. And we'll just see. I'm going to put eventually 3 coats, and then we'll have a close look at it when it's done. It actually dries nice and hard, this stuff. But anyway, let me mix up the paint. We'll get it on there, and then we'll have a look at what it looks like after I've got 2 coats and it's hardened off. Okay, just quickly before we move on, hopefully it's hard getting the camera just right, but hopefully you can just pick up a bit of light and you can see that this isn't a perfect paint job. The paint job's not too bad, but it's not a perfect preparation job. So there's a little, if you get low and you look at with the light just right, you can see a bit of print through with the fiberglass. Some of that weave is just showing through, and there's a couple of things that I haven't sanded out really to showroom level. But remember, this is centerboard. It's going to be underwater or tucked away in its case, so I didn't want to go too crazy. Overall, I think that the job is not too bad though. That paint, the enamel, the oil-based paint that I'm using, and the Penetrol has bonded very, very well. I'll say that, but it's also flattened quite well, so it's fairly effective. It won't harden for about 30 days, so it takes a month to reach its maximum hardness, but by then it should be quite hard wearing. But also this paint's, what I've seen, it's fairly flexible as well. Not that this will move too much because it's encased in resin. I really do want to take care getting this centerboard case exactly right. It has to be on the center line, just so my keel, my centerboard, is actually on the center line rather than being crooked and trying to make the boat go in different directions. But also, once we've got this, then of course we're going to be taking all of our frames, working out from there. So I'm sort of pretty keen to get this just right. Check that length. It's good. And oh, perfect. All right, that's a good check. Okay, so there was a few stages to that cut. Ran that on the line, just inside the line. Put the multi-tool through and cut it out. The reason why I didn't just do the whole thing just with the multi-tool is I can't guarantee that the edges of the hole are exactly 90 degrees. So just by putting this bit of ply with this factory edge right on the line, I can then run the router, and that does a couple of things. It gets the cut exactly to the line. It also just nibbles out a bit of the profile here, which I'm going to need because the centerboard will be just a little, the centerboard case, I'm sorry, will just be a little bit proud of the bottom, so it needs to be relieved. There needs to be somewhere for it to go. So the router did that. And what else? It made the edges 90 degrees. So that centerboard case, the edges are 90 degrees. They need to be able to fit in there. The other one is very, very close to the line, but again, just so I can just nibble out the profile and get that exactly 90 degrees. I'll flip that over and I'll just hit it with the router again, but you don't need to see that. We'll just see how snugly she drops in there. Come on. That's nice and tight. Oh, it's in. Didn't feel like it. Oh, that looks really great. So, oh, that's as good as I can possibly hope. So, this line under here, so this bottom log, is following that curve exactly. Like you could just fit a cigarette paper under there if you were lucky, I guess. So that looks good. Does it look square? Okay, pretty good. So I'll just have to square it up, but just for an eyeballs check. That looks great. Where I routed those grooves out of the profiles, there's just a little bit to spare, but it's holding it in nicely. How much is protruding out the bottom? And there's just a couple of millimetres protruding out through the bottom of the gap, which is what was asked for in the plans. So that's great. So this is a dry fit at the moment. These hardwood spaces, I do need to sand them now, make sure that they're flush with this. Epoxy them, especially on the inside. These haven't been coated yet, so I'll do that now. I've actually got a cow to milk, so that's it for today, and we'll pick up again tomorrow. The centerboard case is a glued and screwed affair, so I've mixed up some epoxy with glue powder to a mayonnaise consistency and spread it where the wooden spaces will go. All of the screw holes were measured and pre-drilled a while ago, speeding up the assembly. The pivot pin of the centerboard has been coated in lanolin grease, and I put baking paper down where the centerboard and case would be in heaviest contact to try and avoid paint damage. The paint is cosmetic, as the wood of the board is protected by layers of fiberglass and epoxy resin. To keep the heavy centerboard stowed during fitting, I was able to place a bit of taped threaded rod through the low friction ring of the lifting strop. It is possible for one person to move the assembly, but it's much nicer to have a friend on hand for this step. I was actually able to use the rod holding up the board as a handle while manoeuvring the case into the slot. As you can see, the bottom panel on the building jig is very well supported, and as I had given it a layer of fiberglass, I wasn't worried about the surface. Okay, that looks perfect. So that's just holding it at the moment. Alright, so I've got frame number 5 here. On its marks, I've clamped it at both sides, and I just made sure the centre case was nice and square relative to the hull, and I've just fixed it with a screw. So now I can go through, pre-drill all these holes, and at the moment we're in the dry fitting stage. So all I want to do is get all these holes pre-drilled, countersunk and everything like that, so when it comes time to put the epoxy on, I can just zap all of these and I'll know that everything's squared up because I've already done it. So I don't want to do too much at the moment, just because the epoxy squeeze out coming through here, I'll absolutely get covered. I know myself. So I can pour myself a beer. Oh, so a nice home brew actually, a nice ale. I can do that. I think I'll drill all those holes, get everything dry fitted, and then tomorrow we can epoxy this into place. But this is the first bit of booze that I've drunk for the construction of the boat, but this is a little bit of a milestone. We're popping the centerboard in, and we've actually attached our first frame. So now things should go fairly quickly to get this looking like a boat. Thank you to everyone who regularly joins us here on the channel, and a special thanks to everyone who supports us with a small contribution. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you next week.